Hello and welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life Show. I'm your host, Angela Marie Williams. As an entrepreneur and success coach, my mission is to empower you to realize your dreams and potential through transformational experiences. The purpose of this show is to inspire your positive change by learning from a community of those paving the way to a bigger, braver life. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5. I am Angela, your Braver Life Coach. I'm so excited you're joining us today. We have an amazing guest, one of my former mastermind colleagues. Her name is Heidi, and I'm so excited to have her on. I'll let her introduce herself, and we will talk about how she's living her bigger, braver life. So Heidi, take it away.
Thank you, Angela. So I'm Heidi Gruss. I have my own private psychotherapy practice in southeastern Connecticut. I've been a licensed psychotherapist for like almost 18 years now, and also am the creator of the transformation methodology, where I work with probably a lot of women that are here in this group with you here, who can relate to just wanting to never be in that average category within their industry. They work so hard, and we've had side conversations very similar to this because we once were these women too, right? Where it's like you work so hard and at the end you achieve this success, but you're like, that's it? Like that, I wanted more. For me, living the bigger, braver life is really, it comes down to something so simple that I affirm every single morning. And it is, I live by my own rules. And those rules, they might change by the season. They might change by the year. They might change by the, 3-year plan, but I own them. They are my rules. I'm in the driver's seat. And that is exactly what I empower all of my clients to do too, how to live.
I love that. Living by your own rules. That is so empowering and inspiring. So I'd love to know, Heidi, a little bit more about your backstory. What led you to pursuing this way of life?
So, number one, as a therapist, right, we encourage our clients to do things to better themselves all day long, right? And so I really believe that part of getting them to do the work is showing that you do the work too, right? It's like we all have different lifestyle needs that we need to put ourselves in a place where we're thriving in life. Just like somebody with diabetes has to be really, really super mindful about their diet and how active they're being and things like that. Just for the average person to feel like they're waking up every morning feeling, inspired and committed to do the things that they need to do to feel well, they have to subscribe to a certain regimen, a certain self-care plan, right? And so for me, part of it is just the identity of, I'm not just going to talk the talk, I'm going to walk the walk with you. And you're going to see that when you work with me. The other piece is, I've always been a high achiever. And at one point I was working in corporate, executing behavioral health contracts. And I was getting, year after year, these like glowing performance reviews, right? Where it's like, you did outstanding, blah, blah, blah. And good job. We're going to put you in charge of another big project,
Yeah.
And so I learned the reward to working really hard when you're working for someone else is you get more work.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, it was like, I was not feeling the passion in my work anymore because it didn't feel meaningful. It just felt like, what else can I do for the company? Right. It wasn't as much about like, how am I impacting lives? Who am I? Who is really being influenced by like what I have to give? And so when I opened my clinical practice, that's where I felt like, oh boy, I am in my place of brilliance. And now how can I serve more? Yeah. And that's where, the coaching piece for me, speaking with more and more people who could identify with just existing in life and knowing there was more for them. And it was like, okay, I've got a solution. Now let's get you there. And that for me, it inspired me. It comes full circle,
Yes.
when you do this kind of work. So that's my backstory. And thanks for letting me share that too, because I don't always get that when I have these different types of speaking engagements. So
Yes, I'm so glad you shared. And, Heidi, it's so interesting because I feel like we share a lot of similarities in our story. I had a similar experience where we joked like I was like the workhorse of one of the jobs. And so, I was like the most, second most senior or whatever, and doing all these work and doing all this work. And I mean, you get to a point of burnout, you get to a point of exhaustion. I mean, I did anyway. And the reward, getting more work, because that's supposed to be, oh, well, we trust you, we give you this responsibility. But in reality, for me, like, that's not how I wanted to work. I didn't want to work exhausted, burned out, having to just continue. I wanted a break. I wanted to be able to decide how that looked and the quality and be able to do that on my own terms. And yeah, same thing for me when I opened my therapy practice. That was like freedom, and that was exciting because I was able to support people in the way that I felt they could best be supported. And going on to opening that coaching practice, it opens to another level of supporting people. So pretty spot on with that. I love it.
But you know what though? Like, wasn't there a time for you? Because I know for me, in the beginning of my career, I went from intern to just below the director of a huge outpatient clinic, right? And it was like, there was something motivating about that initial hustle and grind too.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because for a lot of people, it's like, we didn't just skip over that step. Like there were a lot of years there where, if I could go back and talk to that younger version of myself, right, to say like, girl, you don't have to do it that, you don't have to not sleep. You don't have to work that hard. You don't have to sacrifice like pleasure. But there is value in having had that experience now, because I know, when we cross paths with those women who are there now, it's like, let me open the door and show you a different way. And they know that we know what they're talking about because we've been there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And the important parts for me in growing out of that is really being able to be aware of the thought process. Where does that idea come from that, the hustle culture is so inspiring or exciting, or, this is the way we do it. And looking back to find some of the old beliefs rooted, generationally too, having that passed down. And sometimes the work culture, the industry, I think helping professions, we just bleed and work really hard. And that's kind of how we roll and preach self-care to everyone else, but neglect that on our own end. So, it was really digging through those belief systems that fueled that, being able to really undo and relearn how to work and live and hold that in a balance that is healthy.
Yeah. And how I talk about that with my clients is I refer to them as stories, right? Mm-hmm. What is the story you're telling yourself in this situation, right? Whatever the belief is, something so basic, like, that's just who I am. I have a poor sense of direction. That's just, I cannot, get myself anywhere. Well, that sounds like a story. Like you got yourself here today. You got yourself to work. So let's talk about that, right? Because until we change the story encapsulates everything. When we address the story, we're addressing all aspects. We're talking about the belief. We're talking about the thoughts in our head. We're talking about our self-talk. We're talking about our feelings. So when we rewrite that story, we have the power to change the whole dynamic, right? We're creating a whole new vision. Mm-hmm. And, the reality is we don't know our stories until someone else sometimes tells us that's just a story.
Absolutely, because we're born and we grow up in this story and it just feels like normal. Doesn't everyone experience this? That's the question. And no, actually, I think we were both present when we learned about that drama triangle. And I bring that in so much with my clients too. And for those listening, the drama triangle is something super helpful and interesting to research. You're welcome to search that and you'll find plenty of information. But essentially what it is there's this dysfunctional way of relating with other people. It's the triangle. The bottom is this victim kind of personality, or not really personality, but outlook, right? Because it can be changed. It's more of that perceiving piece. And there is a persecutor and there is a rescuer. If you can kind of hear those words and look at some of the patterns that may be going on in your life, and this can show up in your personal relationships and your family dynamic, with your business even. I thought that was a really eye-opening thing where it just is everywhere, right? I think that's the thing, is that when we understand where we are, if we're in that victim state, if we feel helpless, if we feel, that we can't make a change, then guess what? We won't. But if we know that we can make a change, if we think we can make a change, we can, because we are in control of our choices and thoughts.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about your methodology. That name is just super great. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, really what this is it's helping. In my case, most of my clients are women. I do work with men too, but I'm going to use those pronouns just out of habit, but not trying to exclude anyone from the conversation. Here in the transformation methodology, it is really allowing women to step into their identity, getting really close to their authentic self, right? And learning how to exist in their place of brilliance. I use that all the time. Right?
Yes.
It really is about what is true for you as you know it today. And because here's the thing, we all hit glass ceilings somewhere along the line, right? I mean, whether it's in our relationship, whether it's in our business, whether it's, the income ceiling, we want to surpass a certain income level, or we're looking to finally get to that CEO, president of a company, you're climbing that corporate ladder. There's all of these different hierarchies, in our culture, but the biggest limits are the ones we put on ourselves, and so it's figuring out why do you keep getting to this one point and then stopping, and Angela, this is really like the best time of year to be having this conversation.
Oh, yes. Yes.
My heart bleeds right now to everyone who's saying, I want the transformation, and they've geared themselves up, right? There's all this like energy and oomph to finally start because it's January 1st.
Right.
And what happens is all these resolutions, they become really rigid rules.
Mm-hmm.
In the mind, what happens is the moment we don't follow one of the rules, we have to quit, because the idea of failure, to the high achieving, successful woman who doesn't fail, when we don't follow the rule, it's like, oh my gosh, this isn't working for me. I must be doing something wrong. When really there's nothing wrong with you. It's the way you're going about doing this.
Preach, Heidi, preach.
Because listen, there's the same 4-week cycle, right? January 1st, this week, everyone is crossing every T and dotting every I. I guarantee it. They're going to finish the week strong and be like, nailed it, right?
Yeah. So true.
Next week, they're going to start and they're going to be really inspired again. But by the end of the week, because we're smart ladies, we are, and we know what corners we can cut without really sacrificing much of the outcome, right? We know how to do this, okay? Then week 3 comes along and we think we're super women, but really life happens.
Right.
The thing that's beyond our control. We go out to the flat tire, or everybody in the household is sick, or all of a sudden, there's your referral funnel is not working, right? For your business, whatever it is, life happens. And that setback is so huge that you don't even show up for week 4. And then you're restarting all over again. Yeah. And that is the pattern that happens month after month, quarter after quarter, right? And what does that cost you? It takes you so much energy to finally start again, rather than riding out the momentum that you started week 1 and week 2 and realizing week 3 is just not going to measure up to week 1 and 2, but you just keep going. You will get further just riding that momentum. But this knee-jerk start and stop, I see it cost too many people the success that they're really looking for. And what it comes down to is the mindset piece. Because when week 3 happens and life takes over, why can't you still move forward? And that's where the stories in our head come in, right? What is the story in your head telling you that when your entire household has the flu or COVID or whatever it is, that you can't show up anyway?
Yep. I love that. And I want to add on to that too. And actually, I was doing some research and I can't remember the source now, but I believe January 19th is like National Quitting Day. That would be in that 3-week cycle, right? Where everyone has done their best and then now we're tapping out. So, I agree. It's the mindset, there's stories, there's limiting beliefs. I do also want to add the component, and what I'm working on with clients now is sometimes when we make these goals, like you said, they become like these rigid rules and they're not empowering or inspiring or stuff that we can really, get jazzed about. Like we might for a little bit, but then we're not fully bought in. And I think that there is a lack of a thorough planning process. So I tell people never make New Year's resolutions, never make these like just arbitrary, vague goals like, oh, I want to get fit or whatever. Atomic Habits, I have read it and I recommend it to basically all my clients when they're looking to start these new routines, because there's so many pieces and factors, right, that go into that, but really helpful tips for that too. But for me, it's really guiding them through a complete vision process. It's not just these little goals here and there, these vague things that we can't measure, they're not tangible, that we don't have any buy-in to, that we don't have our why truly connected. We don't have our future connected to the now. So that's what I think also is missing in the success, not only their limiting beliefs holding them back, but the lack of that thorough planning process, putting that why in there, getting that vision, getting it really mapped out. And I actually have a vision workshop that I do with folks, and I'll be doing it regularly throughout the year because, like you said, if we fall off, we can always get back on. It's totally okay. And sometimes we need help with that. But I was actually doing it with my husband, and we were like, wow, this is a lot. But you know what I mean? Like, I have never been so prepared in my entire life for this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And the visualization piece for me, I go to the feeling in the vision.
Yeah.
Right. So it's okay when you follow through, and because anybody can do anything one time or for 1 week, and it's an event, right? I say this at the beginning of every training, anything I do, it's like, please do not treat today as an event. This is the beginning to your process.
Love it.
Right? Treat it as an event. You're going to be here, be really inspired. You're going to smile a lot, take a few notes, and then you're going to go home and you're going to resume life as you know it, and nothing changes.
Yep.
But I want you to think for a moment, right? What the difference is, after walking 20 minutes a day after a week versus at the end of the month, being able to look back and say, you know what? I walked for 20 minutes every single day, every day of this month. Right, regardless if it was raining outside, if the kids were sick, if whatever the circumstance, I still prioritized 20 minutes a day for myself, right? The return on that is huge. It's not about fitness. It's not about weight loss. It is about honoring your commitment to yourself, right? And that, when I ask people to think about how are you going to feel, you really did that. Like, oh, you're accomplished, right? You feel like you're worth something, right? You're going to feel less stress. You're going to notice that how the walk actually helped you on specific days. You're going to notice it changed your breathing patterns. You're going to notice that, you had clarity of thought. You're going to notice that you were better able to actively problem solve, right? You're going to notice all of these things. And then how does that affect you going back and doing whatever kind of job you do? And I don't mean just job for work. I mean, your job as mom or your job as partner to someone, like whatever it is, how does it make you better in all of those roles that you play?
Love that. Yes.
It doesn't have to be a walk either, but just anything that you commit to.
Right.
Every single day. Right. And when you get close to those feelings, and then you think about, okay, now how are you going to feel if you do the old 4-week cycle and you fall off week 3?
Yeah.
How are you going to feel if you only do it half of the time? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you look at these feelings and you identify, what does it cost you to not follow through? Well, then you're just reinforcing the old belief. And for a lot of people, it is, I can never seem to get to that next level. I can never seem to follow through and get myself there. Something always seems to get in the way. Well, no, it's this right here. And so let's get really close to that feeling. Don't you want to feel different this time around? Hold on to that feeling. What is it going to mean to you when you feel that inside you? No one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
And so that ownership piece.
Yes. Yes. It's, I label that more as being the leader in your own life and, making the choices that are going to bring you to the next step. And I'm really picky about sometimes that language, right? Like, oh, I'm never going to, because that's what, if you're into like energy in the universe, that's what it's being heard. I can never get to the next step. And that's what you're going to continue to get. That's what your brain believes. That's what is going to come to you. And so it's also like tweaking that language. What's the preferred way that you want to speak about that and feel about that? Exactly.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in the transformation methodology, we have a whole section assigned to, the whole, even before the program begins, it's all about this vision development, right? And then we get really into, there's like a 5-part journal activity that my clients do every single day. It includes gratitude, but affirmations. And the affirmations come from the vision that you're creating, right? We set an intention for the day. We rewrite the stories, and you find, we will develop a 3 to 4 line story that counteracts the old belief, right? And my clients will rewrite that every single morning. And the last piece is a celebration. And I'm going to tell you, this is really important to me because, again, the worker bees, right? The queen bees that are working all the time, they are really used to waiting for the big achievements to celebrate, if they're even able to step into that glory.
Great, that, yes.
So there is a daily celebration, right? And it's the smallest thing. Like, I went to bed when my body said I needed to go to bed, even though it wasn't yet 9 o'clock. It might be, I didn't overeat the New Year's spread that we had, or it might be something really meaningful. Like, what? I designed a glorious night with me, a glass of wine in my hot tub, just to honor me in the day. Right. So the celebration can vary, but it is about making sure like that's a value now. Like, you have to celebrate you, and we don't just wait for the big things, because if we wait for the big things, we miss all of the really important steps along the way.
All of the progress. Right. I couldn't agree more. And I have my clients do the same thing. And what I love about having this conversation with you, Heidi, and, for those listening, part of the show, right, is all about bringing us together with our community members. And our community members can be anyone, right, that we can learn from, that we can grow with, that we can get inspiration, take a little nugget from. And, what I love about having these conversations is that even though you and I are actually pretty similar in the work that we do and the methodology, ideology that we have, but, everyone's going to listen to this and pick out something different and relate to one of us differently. And what I'd love to say too about that is that, this is a time of celebration and support for both of us, for all of us. And I want to bring to mind just this, because I see this kind of going around a lot, is like, we're here to celebrate each other too. So celebrate yourself. We're really good at celebrating other people, but celebrate yourself just as you would. And also, I think celebrating also detracts from that comparison piece that a lot of people get stuck on. And also, when you're celebrating yourself, when you're celebrating somebody else, like there is no competition, right? There is no need for comparison. And so, even though we have similar ideas and ways that we go about things and we're in the same coaching space, like there's no competition because you're badass at what you do. I'm badass at what I do. And we get to come and just share and be this part of this community. So anyways, that was just on my mind. I had to share that. I feel like there's a lot of conversation about celebrating women right now. And I just wanted to share that.
I think it's so important to hold gratitude when you cross paths with another woman who might be so similar, where normally there might be that competition or something or comparison, but it is the gratitude of, yes, she gets it. She gets it, right? Don't you feel so like validated and understood? It's like when we're talking this language about living a bigger, braver life, like, hey, 10 years ago, I was intimidated by this conversation. And to know that I knew someone else that wanted to have the conversation too, it then allowed me to step forward, So when we link arms and say, yeah, it's okay, we can have this conversation. And you're going to be better on the other side of the transformation. Let me help you step into that fear so you can feel the magic just like I did. I mean, that's a sisterhood. That really is a sisterhood.
I love that so much. And the reason I bring that up too is, a lot of the things that I learned in life that were very impactful to me came from the lessons and the stories and the experiences of other people, and gratitude for having them share that with me and the lessons. And I think that's what we do in coaching is we take the things that we've learned, maybe the hard way, spend lots of time, blood, sweat, and tears figuring out and try to give that in a nice, concise package, with support and love to somebody else. And I think that's a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah. I mean, if we can save someone else and simplify the process,
the goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Heidi, can you share maybe a particular client story or a story from your own life that maybe who has walked through your methodology that's had a really big success with it?
So listen, I'm going to tell, so there's a ripple effect with everything, right? And one of my clients, my favorite clients, right? So, I mean, because you know what, when I first met her, she was sad. I mean, she was just visibly sad. And we would talk about how much time she spent just wallowing, right? And successful though, led a very successful career.
Sure.
There was just that sadness. And one of the major themes to her work was figuring out how to love herself.
Mm-hmm.
And, we did the stories, we did the affirmations, we really challenged her on her decision-making, her thought process, how she was spending her free time, who she was spending her time with, all the things that influence our energy and our attitude and our mindset. And at the end of her 3-month program, right, she just in the last 3 weeks, she was like, I just want to tell you, I've lost almost 10 pounds, just in the last 3 weeks. Right. And so I was like, that's fantastic. She's like, I've never lost weight so easily before in my life. Right. And she's like, but I'm just, and I said to her, well, what are you doing? Are you trying to? She's like, no, I'm just respecting myself. I'm just loving myself. Right.
Wow.
But here's the thing, right? When we are out of balance, out of sync with ourselves, our bodies are screaming at us, telling us, right? We're just not listening because we're too busy. We're too busy doing, right? Just like her body was screaming at her, right? And when she got close to her natural groove, right? Where she was in her place of realize everything just fell into sync. I think some of that weight had to do with stress.
Yeah.
I think it had to do with her just overall attitude every day. I just saw her, I think Monday or Tuesday night, right? And she was so happy. I'm like, you are so happy right now. I know, I'm just so happy. So it's just that ripple space, right? So we're going after self-love, and then the evidence just shows up. right? The evidence of that. So I don't know. I just loved that story.
I love that. I mean, you're so right. And some of the ways are obvious that there's a ripple effect, right? And some of the ways are not so, maybe obvious. And, I think of a client I had, and, they're like, oh, I share all the stuff that you say with my sister and my boyfriend and my everything. And I'm like, wow, like this is great, because the goal is really to impact as many lives as possible, right? So it's like, that's amazing. But this seems like a little bit of a different, like you wouldn't expect that, right?
Well, so the other, I mean, I'm with you. So I'm totally speaking your language with this sort of like residual impact. Like we work with one person, but we help a whole tribe of women that surround that woman.
Yes.
But you know what else I love? So I'm really big on communication. Like it's something I am constantly challenging my clients with. I had a client earlier today. She was talking about how she was managing her staff. And I'm like, I said something about, the way you're going to look at her or something. And she said, oh, you want this to be in person, not like text? I'm like, oh, we have to back up here. No, none of this is text message. This all is face-to-face. In person. This is a conversation. You want to be taken seriously, you need to take the conversation seriously. So let's like back this up a little bit.
Right.
But I'm really big on communication, internal dialogue, out external dialogue. But then when I see the power of mothers communicating with their daughters specifically, right? Because here we are, we're shaping young minds here too, right? And I'm encouraging you to go live according to your rules and to demonstrate for your children that you're now role modeling for, that they can do this too when they're older, right? I mean, the power behind that, because again, children don't learn by what we tell them. They learn by what they see us do. Right. And so you change that. I mean, that is so empowering for me. That is just
amazing. Yeah. And that's part of, my mission for my company is to impact generational growth. And, I think that really nails it on the head. It's when we can improve ourselves, when we can get to a place where we've cleared out our emotional clutter, our limiting thoughts, our stories that are no longer serving us, and we choose that higher level of growth and being, and really embrace all of the good, that ideal version of us, we get to pass it on to everyone that we come in contact with. That's power right there.
It is. It's just energy. And you know what? All that energy that you're putting out there, it's coming back to you somehow, and when you believe in this, it's just, it is life-changing. So the first step is to confront those beliefs, confront those stories. There is a lot of humility in just acknowledging, and listen, we're never cured either. Right. We live on a growth path forever. That doesn't mean that we ever are, we've hit the level and we're good to go. Right. We're always growing.
Yeah. And some of the kind of ways I explain it to my clients is like, it's kind of like taking, maybe one of those limiting stories and how do we shrink it down into like a piece of salt, right? Like, how do we take that power away from that and then really focus our energy on what we want to do, what we want to be. And sometimes it might come knocking at the door. I have an example of when, recovering workaholic and whole thought process and stuff. And I remember like, I didn't feel like I could just ever at one point in my life sit and not do something. Like I had to be doing something. I couldn't just sit. And I remember, after doing some work and finally kind of sitting down, kind of getting out of that burnout situation and, sitting and really it just that faint knock at the door. Wait a second, what are you doing? You got to fold the laundry, right? And, but it gets easier to speak back to it and say, no, we're good. We're just going to chill. Right.
Because when you've really stepped into your power, you realize that there are moments when you need to be disciplined. There are moments when you can choose, you make a choice
Yes.
to do something different.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And you own the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Take responsibility. The good that comes from it, the bad that comes from it, and you move on. And there's no shame, there's no guilt, because it's a choice. And you realize you as a being have the opportunity to choose. And just because you made one choice today doesn't mean you're now wedded to the same choice for tomorrow. You get to change your mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, this is all so good. And, for those who are listening, I hope you can feel the energy through this conversation. I can feel it, and we are in two separate states, very far away. But this is so cool. We love obviously talking about this stuff, and hope that it's empowering to all that are listening. But Heidi, what final thoughts or things would you like to leave our listeners with?
Oh, final thoughts.
Isn't that from Jerry Springer, final thoughts or something?
What's the last thing you want to say to Angela and all the listeners today? I could go a million different directions here.
Whatever speaks to you most.
I think don't make too much of whatever it is in your head. We almost started to go there a little bit, we build up these emotions. We've got the thing, whether it's the big life transformation thing, right, or just the, project that's on your to-do list thing. It really doesn't matter what it is, but the thing that you keep putting off and you keep avoiding because it's it's going to take me, 6 hours out of the day to do it. And it's scary. And it's,
yep.
And so the longer that you put that off, the bigger life it grows. And the more intimidating it actually becomes. And when, again, you find the strategy, to really attack that thing and finally approach it, it's never as big as you think it's going to be. Exactly. And in most instances, we can break down all the big things into 100 million tiny little things so that it's so much more manageable. And I just, I forget what the exact example was that someone brought up to me today about, it was the big project. They were going big, 5 years. I'm come back to me for a second though. Right. We are not going to dim the light on this big vision that you have.
Right.
But I want you to be successful. And so I want you to also not become intimidated by this big picture. So let's just do the thing right here. And let's commit to, again, it's the 20-minute walk every single day, and this one little action is going to get you closer to the big 5-year vision. I think that's the biggest piece for me. You've got to step into the fear to feel the magic. Just repeat that. You have to step into the fear.
I love that. That's how we grow. Yep.
How we grow. Yeah.
I love that so much. Yes. And, another analogy I use with my clients is, if you're thinking about climbing Mount Everest, of course, that's going to feel like way too much. It's a lot and it's intimidating and overwhelming, right? But let's just start with putting on our boots.
Yeah.
That's all we got to do today, right? Put on the boots, right? We had some comments for folks watching us on our Facebook Live, and people were really resonating with the small wins. So we have been doing good, both of us, putting that message out there. I love that. Another comment that was shared was it really helps to have an accountability partner to remind you to celebrate. What actually, Heidi, do you have any tips to help folks right now, just to kind of help them remember to celebrate? Because you're right, it definitely takes that effort and that habit.
Yeah. I mean, for all of my clients, whether they have a journal that has that pre-written in or they're writing it into their journal every single day. I mean, it is gratitude, affirmations, intention, stories, celebration.
Great.
So it's all 5 of those things, right? And so it's just, these are the headers. Write it in your day planner if you don't keep a journal, right? Yeah. And you're setting at least one of each of these things every single day.
And I know for me, it really helped to have that professional coach to really help guide me and say, that's a big deal. That's a win. Like, help me identify this stuff when I was first starting to do it. Because you're right, I would, as the high achiever, work hard, I would wait for those big things to happen to celebrate versus the progress along the way. And I really had to hear that. So I think accountability partner, whether you have someone in your life that's your cheerleader that, is really good about that, until you get that running dialogue with yourself, or, you could start a support chat, right? Like with friends, or, make that commitment or hire somebody to help you, because that's what we're here for.
For sure. And, a lot of times when you hire a coach, you do end up connecting to other people, just in the same way we did, right? We met her. And I was going to say something about the small wins. Oh, the other thing is sometimes the celebrations might be the same celebration of, day after day, because it's just, you're so proud of yourself for being consistent, right? It's like day 10 out of 10, I still did the thing, right?
Yes.
And that's a celebration because I got past day 9 when I normally quit.
And you're going to love Atomic Habits because he talks about that buildable, right? Consistency.
So I have to tell you, I started, and it reminds me so much. If anybody has read The Slight Edge, this is going way back. I mean, Jeff Olson wrote this book. This is like, I don't know, I think in the 90s or something, right? It's a great book. It was my favorite book forever. Whenever I would do, talks and things, because his whole premise was the things that you need to do each day with whatever it is, and you design your own plan, but they're so easy to do. They're so easy not to do. And that was my thinking always, like, you're so right. Like, who's going to know if I do the 20-minute walk or not? Right? Because I'm not bragging about that. That's nothing, like, it's not really a big deal. Right. And so if I don't do it, nobody's really going to notice except, and that's the transformation piece. When you honor your commitments, and you're accountable to yourself first and foremost, because you live by your own rules, right? That's the power. So yeah, it's, I'm only on like chapter 2, but there are so many parallels to that book.
I love it. And especially with the work we do, right? Where we are in the business of taking our old habits, routines, stories, things that don't serve us, and transforming them into that ideal life. And so all of these little pieces, anytime we can bring in any knowledge to help us, get that to sink in, the better. So I definitely recommend Atomic Habits for everyone who's listening. And what was the name of the book again? I missed that.
Slight Edge.
Okay.
Slight Edge by Jeff. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So definitely some resources there. I love that. Anything else that you want to say? I know I said final thoughts like 10 minutes ago, but this is such a good conversation. I love it.
It's almost like, and it's not that I don't want to continue it, but if I keep going, then I think
we'll never end. We'll just 8 hours it. Yeah.
I
love it. Well, Heidi, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here today. What a great conversation. I can't wait to hear more feedback of folks listening and tuning in. How can we find you?
Yeah, great question. So Heidi Gruss, it kind of sounds like Seuss, but it's Gruss, Gruss. You can find me on Facebook under that name, Instagram, LinkedIn, my website. It's the same thing. So it's just, as long as you remember the one name, you can pretty much find me anywhere.
All right. And we will add your information to the notes as well, so folks can find you. And thank you again so much for sharing your time, your message, and your love and your light and your energy. And that's it for us today. We will see you in the next episode.